Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a really detailed look at Train Sim World 6, which is scheduled to launch on September 30th, 2025. With early access beginning on the 25th if you pick up the Deluxe edition. It's coming to PC, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Xbox platforms. Now, with every new Train Sim World release, there's always that mix of excitement and caution. On the one hand, we're getting new routes, new trains, and new gameplay systems that promise more immersion. But on the other hand, history has shown us that launch periods are rarely smooth, and there are usually bugs or issues that take weeks, sometimes months to sort out. In this video, I'll walk you through a short recap of everything confirmed for TSW6, the new routes, trains, and features, how performance looks across different systems, and, maybe most importantly, what past releases tell us to realistically expect on day one. If you want the full breakdown from the Dovetail Direct livestream, which I already covered, I'll leave a link in the description. Let's start with the big content reveal. Train Sim World 6 is launching with two brand new routes. First, there's the Morristown line in New Jersey, a busy commuter line that should give players plenty of NJ Transit action. Then, in the UK, we're getting the Riviera line, a fan favorite because of its stunning seaside scenery. And finally, over in Germany, the popular Dresden route is being extended all the way up to Leipzig, giving us a much longer stretch to explore. Alongside these routes, we're also getting the NJ Transit EMU, the GWR Class 802 and Class 150, the Deutschbahn ICET high-speed train, and some of the more overused editions like Dostos and the DBBR 146. The promotional art puts these units front and center, making it clear that Dovetail wants them to be the face of this release. Honestly, the German rolling stock feels a bit disappointing at this point. Dostos are about as common as the Class 66. I get that they're a very typical sight in Germany, but for this particular route, third-generation Dostos would have been a much better fit. The Deluxe edition does bring some interesting additions. By purchasing it, you'll add the ALP 45DP, the Class 220 Voyager, and the V90 Class 294 Shunter in DB livery to your collection. If you'd rather pick up just one of these as a standalone unit, you'll have to wait about a month after the official release before they become available separately. For the first time in years, Train Sim World is layering steam into a new modern route. On the Riviera line, you'll be able to see and drive steam-operated trains as part of special rail tour services. These won't be brand new engines built just for TSW6. Instead, they'll layer in from your existing DLC collection. So if you've already bought steam locomotives in previous versions, they'll appear naturally within the Riviera timetable. What makes this particularly interesting is the route itself. The South Devon banks are some of the steepest gradients in the region, and steam locomotives are notoriously challenging to keep under control on grades like this. Add in wet weather or poor adhesion, and you've suddenly got a really demanding driving experience. This isn't just a scenic tourist run, it should test your fireman skills and throttle management. But judging by how steam trains currently work and are represented in TSW, I'd bet it won't feel all that immersive or realistic, as they said. Where TSW6 really tries to stand out is with its new gameplay mechanics. The headline feature is the random events and faults system. This means while you're driving, you may suddenly encounter things like a signal delay, a temporary speed restriction, or even a train fault, such as your headlights or wipers failing. It's designed to add unpredictability to services, making runs feel less routine and more like a real-life railway where things don't always go to plan. But here's the catch. This kind of system could also introduce a whole new category of bugs. Imagine you're halfway through a 45-minute service, and a random event causes AI traffic to get stuck. The dispatcher might not reroute properly, or the fault system might glitch and make it impossible to continue. At that point, your only option is to restart the entire run from the beginning. And that's a pretty big risk when we already know Train Sim World titles often launch with stability issues. A random event place is chosen by the game's engine itself, not something predetermined. While it adds a layer of realism, since the locations for restrictions, for example, aren't always the same but randomized, it also introduces instability. Bugs are more likely to appear in these situations because the system might place restrictions in locations that aren't well suited for a random event like a speed limit. And if the system isn't perfectly designed, those bugs will inevitably show up. And while they told us the system will choose a suitable location, I don't fully trust those words. Another long-requested feature is finally here: passenger and platform announcements. This means trains will make audible station calls, and there'll be platform announcements as well. On paper, this really boosts immersion, something fans have asked about for years. The big question is whether Dovetail has recorded enough variety. One thing worth appreciating is that if the route is set in Germany, you'll only hear announcements in German. Personally, I don't understand a word of German, but it definitely adds to the authenticity. They did mention subtitles, but we don't know when they'll actually arrive. We'll also get train departure announcements at every station. Normally, these kinds of announcements are only made at larger stations, but that often depends on how developed the area is, the type of train, and the criteria used to classify a station as major. Since handling that individually for every station would be complicated, they decided to apply announcements everywhere. It's not really a problem, and they did mention we should expect further improvements. The big question is whether Dovetail has recorded enough variety. If the voice lines are too few or badly timed, they could quickly become repetitive. We've noticed that the voices are built from bits and pieces, one part saying the train's name, another part saying the line, and so on. From this we can conclude that these are adaptable, always changing depending on what's happening on the lines. The sounds in stations are volumetric, using virtual speakers, so the closer you are to a speaker, the louder it will sound. Alongside the new features, the game also brings back several familiar modes that players already know. The free roam sandbox mode, which lets you wander the map freely, a conductor role, where you can step into ticket checking duties, a photo mode, and the Creators Club, which remains the community hub for sharing liveries and scenarios. There's also a free starter pack at launch, which lets you upgrade from the current version of the game to the new one at no cost. This offer becomes available on September 30th and stays open for 6 weeks. So as long as you upgrade within that window, you're covered. After that, you'll need to purchase the game even if you already own TSW5. The starter pack is a good move, since it lays the foundation for future DLC you might be interested in. All your DLCs will carry over to the latest version, unless you're on Epic Games, which is still a big problem I've already covered in a previous video. Still, nothing about that was mentioned in the live streams, and I can't really be okay with this lack of transparency. And the situation grew only worse. The initial carryover list has now been cut shorter. DLCs will be reintroduced gradually, and that process can take months. This means less traffic in-game and weaker immersion, which is already a concern. Dresden-Leipzig comes with 9 scenarios, and we can expect the same for other routes in the Deluxe edition, but only on Gen 9 consoles and PC players. Platforms also get a new switcher to enable all layers and random behaviors at once, but this will enable only the layers available for that platform. If you own all the German DLC, you can stack up to 45 layers on Dresden-Leipzig. That's a huge number, but it's only possible on Gen 9 consoles or Steam. Even so, judging by the Dresden-Leipzig livestream, despite those 45 different layers, the route still felt surprisingly empty. We can also expect some upgrades to the current locomotives. For example, the BR442 now has working suspension. For PC players, also the editor tool continues to exist, allowing custom routes and new trains to be created. However, just like in TSW5, there's our limitations. And in the technical side, TSW6 is still running on Unreal Engine 4, despite fan requests. There's no move to Unreal Engine 5. The developers have said outright that moving to a new engine would require rebuilding everything from scratch, which just isn't feasible right now. So performance and graphics will be very similar to what we saw in previous versions. Some lighting tweaks and minor physics adjustments are promised, but don't expect a massive leap forward. Even high-end users with powerful GPUs have reported stuttering and frame drops in TSW5, especially on newer routes with heavy AI traffic, so this is definitely something to expect. On last-gen consoles like PS4 and Xbox One, the compromises are even more severe. To keep performance stable, timetables are simplified. For example, on the new German route, all timetable services are tied to the BR442. Other trains like the ICET BR143, BR146, and BR185 are only playable in scenarios. The only additional layer you'll see is a small set of BR294 services. There won't be any AI-only trains populating the already empty world. If you also own the Leipzig-Dresden route, you do get access to the Dresden-Riesa section with its timetable. Interestingly, this may actually feel busier than the main route timetable because it uses the reduced but still functional service pattern already in place. So overall, 8th generation players will get a much more streamlined experience. It won't feel as alive as on newer consoles or PC, but it's a compromise to keep the game playable. Now, it's really important to set expectations by looking at history. Every major train sim world release has shipped with a mix of improvements and frustrating problems. TSW6 launched with broken missions, locomotives that didn't function correctly, and even braking systems that sometimes failed entirely. Players reported missions that were literally impossible to complete. Before that, Train Sim World 4 had its own share of headaches also, including AI trains getting stuck, scenario failures, and outright crashes. Some players described entire routes as unfinished on release day. So while the new features in TSW6 are exciting, it's almost certain there will be issues at launch. And with the new random events and faults system, those issues could become even more disruptive. A bug tied to these features could easily force you to restart a service, especially if the game can't recover from a bad event trigger. That's something to keep in mind before jumping into long sessions. As a short off-topic during the stream, Stuttgart Station was briefly mentioned, comparing the old station to the new, poorly designed but visually impressive one. But the topic was cut short. Could we see Stuttgart 21 as a major project in the game? More info will come in the future, but it was definitely interesting to hear. So, where does that leave us? Train Sim World 6 is shaping up to be an evolution rather than a revolution. We're getting new routes, new trains, and some genuinely exciting features that could make the game more dynamic than ever. But, at the same time, the risks we've seen in past launches haven't gone away. If anything, the new random systems might add a fresh layer of unpredictability, and not always in a good way. I'd say go for it while the upgrade is free. Don't miss the opportunity, but be ready for the unexpected. Whether it's random events, train faults, or the usual launch bugs, there's bound to be a few surprises waiting on release day. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, be sure to drop a like, share it, and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of Train Sim World, real railway facts and liveries. See you in the next one.